evening. I'm Rebecca Highbottom, and this is the Red Lipstick Republic fake news broadcast, where we do our very best to bring you all the fake news, conspiracy theories, pardon me, and rumors that we can scavenge. Basically, we are your geopolitical soap opera reporters. Without further ado, let's get into this broadcast. I only have one article that I want to discuss today. So let's get right into it. Oh my goodness. This article is very, very cool. I actually don't know what to say about it. So I'll just be, I'll be right off the cuff. How about that? We are looking at our Davos friends, and the internet has been absolutely going crazy with what's going on in Davos. There are memes on top of memes on top of memes, but something different has happened this year. Something extraordinary, a shift, a crack, a chink in the armor. We're not sure if this is actually true, but it would appear that it's either being orchestrated as such, or perhaps the winds of change are starting to happen. And if it is true that these winds of change are happening, they are not happening in the direction of the elites. And I do think that they might be crapping their pants just a little bit. Or the alternative is that this is just part of the show. You make that decision. You do your own research. You figure out whether or not this is just part of the show, or if in fact we are making a difference, whether it's people like myself or whether it's Elon Musk, who I'm not completely trusting, but he is coming out as well. And there are two people at the World Economic Forum that literally made a splash this year. And I do think that if they are sincere in their speeches and in what they brought forth to the Davos meeting, then I really do hope that there is a chance that we have a chance to change the direction that this sinking ship is going in. All right, let's get into the article. There is a gentleman in the WEF whose name is Mr. Harari, and he is Klaus Schwab, our favorite villain's sidekick. He is his right-hand man. And this article goes on to talk about him. The name of the article that you can find on Slay News, as always, is WEF Mastermind. Now we're talking about Mr. Harari. Human rights are a fiction, just like God, he stated. The article goes on to, very exciting, a top World Economic Forum official has declared that human rights are a fiction. Just like God. Double. The comments were made in a recently unearthed vehicle by Yuval Noah Harari. Now, I don't know if I botched his name, but if I did, too bad. I don't mind. And this gentleman, Mr. Harari, is the same very gentleman that in another speech indicated that the only problem that we are facing with our economy in the next 10 years is what to do with the useless people. Now, if you didn't see that, you should look for it on the internet. It is still available. Harari is often credited as the mastermind behind the WEF anti-human agenda. Now, for all of those people out there that don't know what an anti-human agenda is, it's equivalent to depopulation. It's equivalent to family planning. They name these things in such a way where we're not perturbed by it. We're not moved by it. They change our language to soften the blow so that we're not really catching on. Article goes on. He serves as the senior advisor to the globalist organization, the WEF, and its founder, the chairman, Mr. Klaus Schwab, the villain. During a TED Talk, the WEF architect Harari explained to the crowd why he believes useless humans should have no rights. Now there he is, referring to us, the humans, as useless, first of all, and then he follows it up by saying we deserve no rights. Now, the first question I have for you is, who the hell is he? Who the hell is he? Does he have a badge where it says God? Oh no, that's a fiction, so that no longer matters. Who is he that he can tell us what rights we should and should not have? Before comparing human beings to jellyfish and chimpanzees, let me finish it. Before comparing human beings to jellyfish and chimpanzees, Harari ridicules members of the general public for their beliefs in human rights. First off, I'm not sure if you found anything disgusting or wrong about that statement, but we, the common people, you and I, out on the streets, we are getting offended by the smallest of things. Whether or not we were not treated fairly, whether or not someone looked at us the wrong way, whether someone didn't use a pronoun, whether somebody is discriminative because of their skin color. This man, people, is saying that we are no better than jellyfish or chimpanzees. I would go with the chimpanzees better because there is a theory going around that, we're from apes. I mean, we left some apes behind, but that's, I digress. But the point is that we are being compared to a jellyfish. Doesn't even have a skeleton. We're not even compared to a skeletal form. So this is what he thinks of us. But human rights, just like heaven and God, is just a fictional story that we have invented and spread around, Harari declares. It's a very nice story, he continues. It may be a very attractive story. You want to believe it, but it's not reality, he asserts. It is not a biological reality. First of all, or second or third or fourth of all, the story you tell yourself, Mr. Harari, the very, very, very nice story that you believe in is that you are somehow in charge of us, the chimpanzees and jellyfish. You're no better than a jellyfish or a chimpanzee if you share our DNA. Wouldn't you agree? And if you share our DNA, well, then it's a story you tell yourself and the WEF tells themselves because we didn't elect you. We didn't approve of this story. So, if we're telling our story about human rights and being moral towards one another, then you're telling yourself a story that you're somehow in power and important, and you are not. And just like the story we believe, your story can also be altered. Don't you think? The article goes on to, this is such an exciting article. Just as jellyfish and woodpeckers and ostriches have no rights, Homo sapiens, which is you and I, have no rights also. Take a human, cut him open, look inside, he explains. You find the blood, you find the heart, you find the lungs, you find the kidney, but you don't find any rights. This guy's a super freaking genius. He's looking for rights in a human body. So where would we look for your right to think that you can rule this world? Where would we look for? Would we look under your chair? Or maybe at the WEF under the podium? Where do you find your right? Where do you find your right to say things like this? And where do you think that we will follow your story if you can't follow the simple story of rights? The only place you find rights is in the fiction stories that humans have invented and spread around. No, sir. No, that's not what happened. What happened was you, the people that had power at the time, started the rights story. You started the rights story because you needed our help as donkeys to build the infrastructure that you now enjoy. It is only now that you say we don't have these rights because you no longer need these rights for us. So you guys started the story. The people at the top started the story because when feudalism was in effect, we didn't believe we had rights. We didn't have that story given to us, but now we have. And now, Mr. Harari, that we follow this story and believe in this story, we will hang on to our rights. Thank you very much. And now, putting the genie back in the box, I assert, and I certainly hope that everybody watching this can also assert that no, hell to the no. We ain't giving up our rights. Yes, this is a story, but it's a story that we have gotten, and now we have to hang on to it. So people, no buying poppies for freedom. No buying poppies for having rights. We stand up, we stand together, and we tell the people that are trying to take these rights away, no way. We're going to go on. Harari then pivoted his point to promote the WEF borderless globalist agenda. Again, look, you're going from one story to another. You want you want a borderless agenda, but you also put the borders in. The elites put the borders in. The story of the borders is also a story, because God didn't come down and draw borders in the dirt. He did not divide the planet. Where you see the borders is where the edges of all coasts are. Those are natural borders. Every other border, Mr. Harari, is a story that once you guys told. And right now, I would argue that we actually don't have borders. We actually don't. We have man-made borders, and although they have served us, who's to say that that story doesn't have to change as well? If we are all equal and as humans, and if we are all believing that we have rights, whether you are in Afghanistan, whether you're in China, whether you're in England, whether you're in Canada, people should have human rights. And if human rights were all across the world, if we all demanded human rights, the story would have teeth, because we all would fight for it. But borders, who needs borders actually? I would argue that we don't actually need borders if we all have the same common belief in morals, in rights for the human. Who benefits from borders but the people up top? Because they make their money on taxes, on tariffs, on immigration. There is historically reasons to have borders, because different people have different cultures, but even those were stories that were given to us, Mr. Harari. So you can pretty much make stories out of anything if you want to argue that fact. That would be my point. But we're going to move on, because this guy just is the gift that keeps on giving. The same thing is true in the political field, he says. Well, I'm glad you're getting to that, because that is the biggest bullshit story that we have ever had to swallow. States and nations are also like human rights, like God and like heaven. They too are just stories. Right, they are. And you better be careful, because if we get wind of the fact that all of these are stories, actually, let me strike that. If everybody else gets the wind of the fact that these are all stories, then, my friend, you're going to lose your power, because nobody's going to listen to any of your stories. Harari then expanded on his open border narrative by attacking America and Israel with the claims that they don't exist in reality. I would have to agree with him there, because these are stories that we have historically been following. And wars, which are one of the biggest money makers that any and every country make, except usually the losers, but not always. Without these stories, what wars would they wage? What war would they wage in World War II? There would be no borders. There would be no reason to do that. But it can be argued also on the other side, because you should look at both sides of the argument. Borders are necessary in order to keep cultures in their own space. But cultures are also stories. Where do they come from? Why does each culture have whatever culture they have? If you really start studying serious history, and you start going back further and further, you realize that this rabbit hole goes down so far that we have each been given our culture, whether you're Chinese, whether you're African, whether you're European, whether you're North American. You have been given those cultures. Those cultures you yourself did not create. And I promise you that if you do enough research, you will come to that conclusion also. So he's right in that regard. In the case of a mountain is reality, he noted. Wow, this guy's really super smart. You know, that's probably why they're running the world, because they're just geniuses, my God. So he states, a mountain is reality. Good for him. You can see it, you can touch it, and you can smell it. I've never smelt a mountain, but perhaps, I guess he's right if there's some sort of foliage on it. I don't know if rocks smell necessarily. But Israel and the United States, they are just stories. So Mr. Harari, I don't know if anybody in Israel or Gaza is listening, but you guys are stories, yo. Very powerful stories. Stories we might want to believe very, very much, but still they are just stories. You can't really see the United States. You can't touch it. You can't smell it. On that note, I will have to disagree. You can see United States. You can see the country. You can see the people in it. They are physical things. Some people smell nicely. But you can see them. The one thing that I do agree with him on this point is that United States, the borders of United States are maybe not, it's reality because they've been set, but they're just stories that we believe, that United States starts here, Canada starts there, Mexico starts there. These are all agreements. But every one of these stories, Mr. Harari, is predicated on profit. As everything in the world is predicated on, anything that the elites want control over, it's profit. The only way to profit from people that aren't in a globalized system is to have different factions. When you have different factions, you can pit people against each other, or at a larger scale, countries against one another. And guess what? There's profit to be had. What is one of the very favorite things that the elites like to say? When there's blood in the streets, that's where the real profits come. So what is that? What is that? That is a profit-making machine. Whenever there is a country that needs to make money, we start a war. America starts wars because they need to produce things for wars. They're number one in wars. Look at where they are. They're everywhere. Canada's no different. I mean, we're their little puppy dog. And wherever US goes, we have a leash right behind them. And the best thing about Canada is we hide behind something called peacekeeping. We hide. Most of Canadian citizens believe that we are peacekeepers. Anyone seen Hunger Games? That's the kind of peacekeepers that Canada is. Peacekeepers, all right. Those are peacekeepers. Oh, and you know, they wear white in the Hunger Game just for added optics. You know, they're not bad guys. They're good guys. They're wearing white. You know. So that's that. These are stories. Now, we're going to talk about another story. I apologize, I did promise you one, but I wanted to showcase how they are up and down, this way and that, and I pulled out another story. That's a story, and the comparison is, it's interesting how some stories are so hurtful that people can go to jail. In the case of pronouns, for example, if you mistreat someone and they tell you a story that they're a girl in a boy's body or so on and so forth, those stories are real, man. They're real. Okay, Mr. Harari, they're real. People's hurt feelings really hurt. But we get sent to jail or we get slapped with fines. But he can say that, oh, human rights are just a story. So if human rights are just a story, why are we waging the human rights for the LGBTQ and for children transitioning? Why are we running these stories? These are just stories. They're not reality. Why are we waging these wars on typical people that have always believed one thing, and now all of a sudden we are waging a war on a story of people deciding that they want to switch from one gender to the other? Because that's a reality. You can see it, you can touch it, you can arguably smell it, I guess. Franklin Graham slams church officials claiming husband and wife are hurtful terms. They're just stories. Why do these stories, husband and wife, why are they hurtful? But human rights stories, well, we can just get rid of those. We don't need those. Who needs human rights stories? And by the way, for all of the people that are in the LGBTQ society group, why are they not appalled that human rights are all of a sudden a story? Their whole movement is predicated on human rights. So did Mr. Harari in this article basically nullify the human rights movement for the LGBTQ society, foundation, group, movement? Or are we all in trouble? We're all in trouble anyway, let's just say that. But are we all in trouble if now all of a sudden he's basically saying to the LGBTQ community, by the way, false alarm, that's just a story, human rights thing, that's just something we tell you to believe, and now it's expired, we don't need it anymore. So just so you know, it's a story that you believe. It's just all nonsense. But husband and wife, the story we've been telling ourselves for hundreds, if not thousands of years for survival's sake, that's just harmful terms. That's a harmful story. The fact that you are here as a result of a husband and a wife more than, well, maybe if you're born lately, maybe you're not born into a husband and wife, but historically you have been born to a husband and a wife. And now that story is no longer needed. You have to ask yourself why these stories are no longer needed. Why don't we need husbands and wives? Why don't we need human rights? These are serious questions. And why are we not asking them? And why are we not bringing Mr. Harari to the fire, to his feet to the fire? Why are we not asking Mr. Harari what he means? And why is he not being charged with some sort of crime? Because to say that we are telling ourselves stories about human rights, what's the point here? What are we doing? What are we standing up for? What do we need? We don't need human rights. If we don't need human rights, we might as well already go into slavery. And the Black Lives Matter movement, the LGBT movement, the Antifa movement, where are you guys? The radical feminists, where are you? When Mr. Harari is saying that human rights is a story, forget about it. You guys stand wherever they put you. Your human rights, all of these groups that are coming out, all of your human rights stories, you guys are following someone else's agenda. Wake up. We all need to realize that we all should have human rights just as living creatures. Just like animals have rights for us not to slaughter them, for us not to abuse them. A wise society knows that respecting all life, whether it's in the water, whether it's in the air, or whether it's two-legged Homo sapiens, we all should give each other the human right, the moral compass, the human right, the respect. If human beings do not take back the power in their own hands individually, because a society is made up of its individuals, and if individuals follow these people's direction, we, my friends, are going into the slaughterhouse, into the meat grinder, into a place that will be hell. If they take our human rights away, we will have nowhere else to go but hell. And anybody that has been previewed to a communist country, a socialist country, a fascist country, or a dictatorship, I promise you, they will tell you that human rights, morality, and respect for one another is the cornerstone of a society that not only thrives, but a society that is able to enjoy the fruits of life. And with that, I will leave you to ponder. If you consider yourself a jellyfish, perhaps there won't be a lot of thoughtful thinking. Maybe if you consider yourself a chimp, maybe you won't think too much of it either. But if you consider yourself a Homo sapien that deserves, and it is your right to have human rights as a human being born on this planet, and if you believe that there's a creator who gave us life, then it is your responsibility to think on this and get very, very upset. Because this, my friends, is what they think of us. They think of us as jellyfish, chimpanzees, and I would argue that that's probably some of the better things that they refer to us as. So with that, I thank you for being here, and I wish you a beautiful evening. Good night.